In this video, we're going to be looking at UFC Vegas 85. I'm going to give you my favorite bets of the week, and we're going to break down the entire card from top down, so make sure you watch until the end. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. The UFC is back. We had a week off and now we're here with a full card to break down. In the week off, I did post a video. You'll see that linked in the description. But we have a great card this week, a lot of close fights. In the main event, we have two ranked middleweights, so let's get right into it. Number 8 in the world, Roman Dolidze fights number 11 ranked Nassourdine Imavov this week. Roman Dolidze coming in at plus money once again. He's the slight underdog here, and that's been the case for his last handful of fights, specifically his last 4. So let's take a look at how those went. First, he blows the doors off of Kyle Daukaus. He finished him in just over a minute into the first round. Now, there was a clash of heads. A headbutt for Roman Dolidze right at the beginning of the fight looked like it rocked Daukaus, so one could argue that the illegal strike changed the course of the fight. It was over before it started. And that's going to happen in Roman Dolidze fights because he crashes the pocket and closes the distance with his head down quite a bit. We saw even in his last fight against Marvin Vettori, he headbutted Vettori. On top of that, Nassourdine Imavov values head position as much as the next guy, as he should. But he's also got to be careful because an accidental headbutt ended his last fight, which was against Chris Curtis. So beware of these two fighting like giraffes this week and the fight ending in a no contest, nuking your DraftKings lineups. Scary thoughts. But after the Daukaus fight, Dolidze cashes as an underdog again against Phil Hawes. Hawes makes the mistake of taking Dolidze down, and he pays the price. Dolidze goes for a leg lock, basically rips his knee out of place, and the fight doesn't stop there, although it should have. He gets back to his feet, brutally knocks out Phil Hawes in the first round. So 2 back-to-back first round finishes, both as underdogs. Then he gets it done again at plus money in the following fight against Jack Hermansson, where he goes full John Cena and it results in a second round finish. So 3 fights, 3 underdog spots, 3 knockouts, all for Roman Dolidze. The streak comes to an end last time out against Marvin Vettori. That was a close fight. The rounds were as close as they could be. The fan voting was pretty split down the middle. It could have went either way. On the other side, Nassourdine Imavov again is coming off of a no contest because of a clash of heads when he was dominating a fight against Chris Curtis. And the most impressive part about that fight is that he was able to get Chris Curtis down 3 out of 4 times. Chris Curtis has elite takedown defense. And we've seen Nassourdine Imavov lean on his grappling before, so we might see that a little bit in this fight also. Roman Dolidze has proven to have bad takedown defense in the UFC, but a lot of that probably comes from how comfortable and confident he is with his grappling. Getting Roman Dolidze down to the mat is like getting on a plane with children. You're not going to enjoy yourself. But for what it's worth, Nassourdine Imavov is not somebody who's going to be finished, and he's shown patience. He doesn't tend to rush things, and I don't see him making the same kind of mistakes that we saw Phil Hawes and Jack Hermansson make. I also like the volume from Imavov in this fight. He's not Max Holloway by any means, but he does throw more strikes on average than Roman Dolidze, and he's a lot more accurate, and I think he has a deeper bag on the feet. He's got more tools to work with overall. And I feel like the 5-round experience that he has under his belt in the UFC against Sean Strickland of all people is really going to serve him well here. He's 8 years younger than Dolidze. There's a lot to like for him in this fight. I see him being the fresher man the later that this goes, like in the 3rd, 4th, especially the 5th round. Even though we've seen him slow down in the past, I think he's going to be fresher than Dolidze late. So I think he fights a cleaner fight overall. I think he learns from slowing down against Buckley, slowing down against Sean Strickland, and just keeps it tight, more efficient with his energy, and cruises to a decision win. Give me Nassourdine Imavov on the scorecards this week. Sometimes the matchmakers will give us a banger, sometimes they'll give us a full-blown Metallica concert, and that's what we have in the co-main event spot. Take the under. And there are a few reasons why I say that. First of all, Renato Moicano is a walking noose. He snatches up chokes with the best of them, is fantastic at getting to his spots on the mat, and I'd consider him an underrated wrestler and even more so an underrated striker. He's got a Charles Oliveira-esque skill set without the accolades. You can think of him as like Charles Oliveira light or like Diet Du Bronx. And you'll see his record on the screen at 17-5. All 5 of those losses have been in the UFC to elite competition. He lost to perennial contender Brian Ortega. He lost to Jose Aldo, who bombed on him in the 2nd round like only Jose Aldo can. Korean Zombie caught him cold in the 1st round very early on, and those were all at 145. A guy this size really shouldn't be fighting at featherweight. Now at 155, I think he's fighting in his rightful place, and the record would suggest as such. He's 4-2 at lightweight, with those only 2 losses coming to Rafael Khizriev, no shame in that, and RDA on extremely short notice. The man has quietly had one of the strongest strengths of schedule you will find in the UFC, and each time he hasn't faced elite competition, he's won. Another reason why I expect the under to hit here is because on the other side of this fight, you have Drew Dober, who's been throwing nothing but hammers and concrete for the last couple of years. years. His last 7 wins are all by knockout. He throws hard. He's got a great chin, so he can stay in the fire to get his own offense going. He's not afraid to take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5 to give 1. He's always in great shape, so even late into fights, he's going to keep coming at you. If he gets stuck on the feet with Drew Dober, it's going to be big problems, massive problems, gigantic problems. Money Moicano has been knocked out several times before, and he stands right in front of you. Now on the mat, I don't think Drew Dober has anything for Renato Moicano. We've seen him taken down several times in the UFC. We've seen him submitted several times in the UFC. Most of his losses are by submission, and he's not even a bad grappler. He's been doing this for a long time. He knows what he's doing, but he has come up against some really strong grapplers, and I think Renato Moicano is as slick as they come. So if the fight gets down to Money Moicano's world, it's wraps. Fight hits the mat, he's getting choked 100%. Now if the fight stays standing, Drew Dober knocks this guy out 100%, which again is why I suggest taking the under. Now at the time of recording this, I don't know what the props look like, but if you have plus money on both sides, a Moicano sub, a Drew Dober knockout, you might as well take both, because if one of them hit, you're still up. As far as picking a winner, I do like Renato Moicano just a bit more, because striker versus grappler, you normally want to go with the grappler. I think the long layoff could be good for him in terms of durability. I know he had the injury along the way, so I don't know how big of an impact that's going to have on him here, but I like Renato Moicano. He's probably hungrier. He typically doesn't fight all that much, so the fact that he's fighting in February tells me that he's probably going to try to fight maybe 4 times this year. And if he goes out there and picks up a first round submission, doesn't get into a war, he can have a quick turnaround and he can go make the money that he's hoping to make. So I like Renato Moicano to win this fight. I think he wins by submission. Next, we're looking at Randy Brown and Muslim Salikhov, a mismatch here in 2024. Muslim Salikhov is old. He was fighting when JFK was in office. He's almost 40 years old. That's old for MMA. It's not old for real life, but for mixed martial arts, especially fighting UFC caliber talent, that's old. Not only that, but he's fighting UFC caliber talent like Rude Boy Randy Brown, who's firmly in his prime. And Randy Brown is going to win this fight. I'm not telling you anything groundbreaking. He's more than a 2-to-1 favorite, but what I will add is that I still think that there's value here. I feel like you could still go heavy here with Randy Brown. He's going to be much younger. He's going to be a lot taller. He's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage. And I expect him to look a lot faster, a lot more athletic. And I could see Muslim Salikhov having a lot of trouble closing the distance against a much bigger fighter. We saw that last week with Woodson and Jourdain. Jourdain just really couldn't close the distance consistently enough to land combinations. I think a lot of the same is going to happen here. I don't think that Muslim Salikhov has that Jack Della Maddalena power where he's just going to have Rude Boy on skates right away. I think Randy Brown cruises here. And I think that size advantage is going to force Muslim Salikhov to wrestle, which is going to help Randy Brown in more ways than one. Because he's so much taller and longer than Salikhov, if Salikhov starts shooting for takedowns, Randy Brown could throw knees right up Main Street. And if the fight does hit the mat, he's got those long, skinny limbs. He is active on bottom, so he's going to be threatening for submissions. That's going to help him get back up to his feet. Not much is needed here, in my opinion. Give me the size, the youth, the speed, the current form. It all points in the same direction. Give me Randy Brown to win this fight by decision. And the matchmaker said, "I will see your mismatch and raise you, Natália Silva beating up on Viviane Araujo." This is a total mismatch. Natália Silva is parlay fuel of the highest order. Uber talented, some of the best footwork in the division, hasn't lost since 2017. Even in her UFC debut less than 2 years ago, she dominated Jasmine Jazz the Vicious, who was just the biggest favorite on the last card. Not only did she win that fight, but she won every round and even picked up a 10-8 on one of the judges' scorecards. And after that fight, she went on to pick up back-to-back knockouts and followed that up with her most recent fight, which was a clean 30-27 sweep over Andrea Lee. She has one of the widest striking differentials you'll find in the UFC, great takedown defense, and she puts a lot of volume out there. On the other side, Viviane Araujo has been a decision machine. She's more than 10 years older at 37. She'll be at a decided speed disadvantage, and she brings with her a negative striking differential, so I see her getting pieced up. She's aggressive, and she's going to take the fight to Silva, but she's going to be a step behind the entire time. Natália Silva has proven to be one of the best fighters in the division. She already has a ranked win. Now she's going to take out number 7 in the division. She gets a title shot in the next 12 months. Natália Silva by decision. And again, she's parlay fuel. We're probably going to have her in parlays on the official betting article on KunithMMA.com. Now, if you want access to the official betting article, you can go right to KunithMMA.com. And for those of you that don't know, we have changed the pricing plans for 2024. So for $24.99, that's total access. You get everything, all the DFS materials, the lineup optimizer, the strategy guide, the projections model, the data. Now, if you just want the lineup optimizer, that's $5.99 for a tool that will help you compete with the rest of the field, because a lot of people you're going to be playing against with DFS are going to have lineup optimizers. A membership on KunithMMA.com is the best way to support the channel. That's going to be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. I hope I see you there. Next, we're looking at Aliaskhab Khizriev fighting Makhmud Muradov, an undefeated Russian is Aliaskhab Khizriev. Just look at him. Just the sight of him makes me feel like I have to defend a double leg. If you go in the dictionary and look up the word takedown, a picture of this guy comes up. And it might not even be him, but just that general look lets you know exactly how this fight's gonna go. 14 men have tried, none have succeeded. He won his fight on Contender Series in just under a minute, last time out in his UFC debut, which is around 2 years ago now. Dispatched of Dennis Tululin pretty easily. Once he was able to take him down in the second round, it was curtains. Now he takes a step up in competition against Makhmud Muradov, who's been in the UFC for the last couple of years and had some big moments along the way. A debut win against a veteran in Alessio Di Chirico, back-to-back finishes after that. Even last time out, he beat Bryan Barberena, who had no business fighting at 185, but he took him down 13 times, knocked him down twice, total dominance. He lost to Caio Borralho as well, no shame in that. Caio Borralho is the truth. My problem is the Gerald Meerschaert loss. And not because he lost to Gerald Meerschaert, plenty of people do, it's because he got GM3'd. What is being GM3'd? Let me set the stage for you if you don't know. Makhmud Muradov comes in as a gigantic favorite, like minus 1,000 favorite. First round, he wins, as you would expect a favorite of that caliber to do. Second round, he throws a punch, is slightly off balance. Gerald Meerschaert takes his back, gets a hook in, the rest is history. The decision making from Muradov after he hit the ground is what gives me a lack of confidence moving forward. Not for nothing, you take down Bryan Barberena 13 times, that means he got up at least 12. And what I expect to happen here is that he just gets overwhelmed by the strength of Khizriev in the clinch and when Khizriev starts going for these takedowns. I see Muradov giving up crucial takedowns, ultimately giving up his back. I think Khizriev's going to strike with them in the early goings, but in round 2 is when I think he's going to open it up, start wrestling here, and pick up a rear naked choke. So the pick for me in this fight is Aliaskhab Khizriev by submission. Next, we're looking at a fight with Gilbert Urbina and Charles Radtke. Radtke coming off of a win in his UFC debut where he had some big words to say to the crowd at the end. They weren't very kind words, and they were in response to him being in a shower of boos that were raining down.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Why were they booing him? Well, he won the fight against Blood Diamond, but he was hanging on for dear life. We all hate lay and pray. We do. This was even more egregious. It was stay and pray. He got the clinch, he worked his way up against the fence and just stayed there for more than half of each of the rounds. And it was probably for the best because he was giving up a little bit of size, and the only path to victory that Blood Diamond has would have been to strike. But moving forward, I would expect him to have to do a little bit more to win fights in the UFC. And he had success outside of the UFC, but when you look at the level of competition, he was fighting largely line cooks at Buffalo Wild Wings. And there's nothing wrong with being a line cook at B-dubs, you're doing the Lord's work, but you can't fight. Gilbert Urbina is coming off of his first UFC win. He beat Orion Kose and looked better than he ever has. That's a really promising sign. He's got an excellent frame for welterweight at 6'2". I like the training situation that he's in. I like the experience as well. Only 11 fights into his career, but he's fought 5 guys with UFC experience along the way. I expect him to showcase good output here, use his range to frustrate and confuse Radtke, and I think he's going to get this guy out of there inside the first round or second round. Urbina's been in there with much better fighters. I think that means a lot. So give me the youth, give me the size, give me the resume, give me the heritage, give me Gilbert Urbina to win inside the distance. Next, we're looking at a rematch with Molly McCann and Diana Belbiţă. In this fight, we have a situation where a very stoppable force meets a very movable object. Molly McCann is 6-5 in the UFC. Diana Belbiţă is 2-4. Again, this is the second meeting between these two. The first fight was one-way traffic. Molly McCann won 30-25 on each judge's scorecard. She beat her like a drum. Belbiţă lost a point in the second round, but still that would have been a 10-8 round. One can argue that it was her UFC debut. Maybe she wasn't her best, and that's valid. And it's also worth mentioning that she has gotten better since then. She's picked up some wins. She's used wrestling of her own. She's clearly made some physical strength gains as well. And she started to utilize her size a little bit more when she's fighting at range. And I think the size is going to be a huge factor here because when you look at Molly McCann, 5'4", 62-inch reach. Her wingspan is shorter than her body. Like after her shoulders, it's basically just wrist. But old alligator arms is tough. I will give her that. She throws good hands. She'll take one to give one. Belbiţă leans on her toughness as well. She's not defensively sound at all. So obviously there are pros and cons to each side of the matchup like there always is, but this fight seems close. It seems tough. With that said, Molly McCann is a minus 250 favorite. She's also been favored in 4 of 5 UFC losses, so Vegas loves them some Molly McCann. But if I think the fight fight is going to be close and I think it's hard to predict, then the line is too wide. I see value on the underdog. While Molly McCann won that first fight dominating with her grappling, she's not a strong grappler. We've seen her taken down and controlled several times in the UFC. Diana Belbiţă is not wrestling all the time, but her takedown accuracy is pretty high. It sits at 62%. If she wants a takedown, she can get one in this fight. Not only that, but she's going to be 3 inches taller with a 6-inch reach advantage. Their first fight again was her debut. That was back in 2019. At the time, Molly McCann was nearly a -700 favorite and looked the part. Fast forward almost 5 years later, the line has shriveled to -250. Well, it's because since then, one side has started to get better while the other kind of plateaued. It's not hard to imagine that Belbiţă is getting much better at only 27 years old, while Molly McCann at 33 is 0-2 in her last 2. I feel like I've said this a couple times already. It's kind of the theme of the fight card, but I'm going to take the bigger, younger fighter here. I'm going to take Diana Belbiţă to win this fight by decision. A Charles Johnson fight week leaves me feeling like the opening scene in GTA San Andreas.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Charles Johnson leaves me feeling like a parent who's not mad, but just disappointed. He has all the tools to be winning fights, and he just doesn't. He's a better striker than every opponent we've seen him fight in the UFC. How do we know that? Well, guys only want to take him down, and when he decides to throw punches, he's touching guys up. Now, he tends to turn it on in the third round of these fights, but it's often too little and too late. If he picked up his activity earlier, he wouldn't be 2-4 in the UFC, he'd probably be 4-2. Against Rafael Estevam, he was wet blanketed for 2 rounds, and in the third round, he nearly 10-8'd him. You could make the argument that should have been a draw. Against Ode Osborne, how do you win that fight? Don't let a gassed out Ode Osborne take you down in the third round. Clockwork. He defends a takedown, he would have had an easy win on his hands, but he loses that fight. Against Muhammad Mokaev, okay, Muhammad Mokaev would never lose to this guy. Cody Durden clearly had his number. But again, he'd have a much better record if he picked up his activity earlier. Now on the other side, Azat Maksum is a shiny 17-0 coming off of a debut win against Tyson Nam, and probably shouldn't have won that fight. Watching it, I thought Nam clearly won the second and third round. Why? Because he stuffed takedowns and he put volume in his face. It's as simple as that against this guy. Keep the feet, throw leg kicks, let your hands go. That's the recipe to beat this dude. Now, of course, he's talented. You can't win that many fights without being talented, but the level of competition was not the highest coming into the UFC, and the blueprint on how to beat him is already there thanks to Tyson Nam. And if you look at the numbers in that fight, he was landing at a 24% clip. That is the lowest striking accuracy I've ever seen out of anybody in the UFC. Charles Johnson is upwards of 55%. So here's how the fight's gonna go. Maksum's gonna shoot for takedowns a lot, and he's gonna get about half of them. Charles Johnson's gonna do very little to stop these takedowns, and he's gonna get back to his feet a couple of times. The ref may stand him up at one point. The round is going to end at some point. And once they're on the feet, Charles Johnson's going to start touching this guy up. It won't even look competitive at range. I can assure you of that. Now, for Charles Johnson, one of the things that I like most about him, for all the red flags that there are, is that he's very tough. It's hard to put him away. But he does let wins slip away. And I remember Dan from Best Fight Picks, who we had on the channel once, he told me that Charles Johnson is a guy who always thinks that he's winning. That's scary, and it's probably true. So yes, he's going to continue to lose decisions. He might even lose this week, but the adjustments that he needs to make to start winning more of these fights are well within his range of capabilities. So much so that I have to take him here. He's the biggest plus money you would find him in his career outside of his fight with Muhammad Mokaev. He has all the tools to get it done. I think he wins a decision here, because even if he's getting taken down and Azat Maksum is just laying praying his way to the round, he may not get the rub on the judges' scorecards. Hopefully not. Hopefully the judges correct some of that garbage. So I think that Charles Johnson wins this fight by decision. Real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. All those things help the channel so much, and a lot of you guys are great with your comments. You've been commenting for years now, and it helps each and every time. So thank you so much. If you haven't already, do those things. Back to the video. Next, we're looking at a fight that should be a great fight. One side you have the story and the grappling from Themba Gorimbo. On the other side, you have the mystery and the knockout power from Pete Rodriguez. Gorimbo's going to be a lot taller, a lot longer here, and he's going to be the one that wants to get to the clinch, get the fight to the ground, and that's where he's going to have the most success. That's his game, and we saw that last time out against Takashi Sato, where he was able to do just that, win the fight with his control. That's smart. That's the path to victory. That's how you beat Takashi Sato, and I don't see him doing anything differently this week. One, because that's what he does best, and two, he's fighting Pete Rodriguez, who has dynamite in both of his hands. He's got 5 wins, all by knockout, all in the first round. His only loss came to Jack Della Maddalena on short notice. No shame in that. Jack Della Maddalena's on a 16-fight winning streak, undefeated in the UFC. But again, there is mystery with Pete Rodriguez because we still don't know if he's any good. His wins have been impressive, but they've been over terrible competition. Like, he beat Mike Jackson in the UFC. Mike Jackson, truly, I don't know how he's there. Outside of that, his wins are against very low-level competition outside of the UFC. He did put work in at an amateur level, so you got to respect that. On top of that, he's fighting out of one of the hottest gyms in the game today, and I think he's in a very winnable matchup. My biggest worries for him is that he's going to gas out here. We don't know what that gas tank looks like. I don't know if he's going to be able to grapple with Themba Gorimbo either. Gorimbo's older. He's been doing this for longer at a higher level against much better competition. He's probably shared the octagon with better fighters than Pete Rodriguez. And either way this fight shakes out, whether it's going to be them striking for a little bit or them grappling for a little bit, it's not going to look competitive. Either Pete Rodriguez is going to starch this guy or Themba Gorimbo is going to be able to submit him in the first or second round. The best bet here would be the under, in my opinion. If you want to take Rodriguez by KO round 1, you'll probably get some nice odds on that. Same with a Gorimbo submission. But as far as a pick for the fight, I know that I already threw some dogs out there. I believe in the power, though, from Pete Rodriguez. I think that the power is something that we still don't know about, but we got to ride it. I think he could find the chin early. I think that Themba Gorimbo is going to have some tall guy defense. I think he's going to be so desperate to get the fight to the clinch that he's going to leave some openings. I think the sneaky accuracy from Pete Rodriguez is going to catch him off guard and put him down in the first round. Give me Pete Rodriguez to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have Blake Bilder versus Jeong Lee. On paper, an extremely close fight with these two. Blake Bilder coming off a loss to Kyle Nelson where he didn't land very much, he didn't throw very much, and he just let the fight get away from him. I would assume when he watches that back, it's going to make him want to puke. And you know what made me puke? The decision in Jeong Lee's last fight. I don't know how he wins that fight, spending most of the time trying to defend takedowns, trying to get back up to his feet. They landed the same amount of strikes. He won a split. I disagreed with it. Whatever, let's move on. Prior to that fight on Road to UFC and Road FC, he was putting guys out. He throws with a lot of power. He tries to finish fights, and he's looking for submissions. There's a lot to like about Lee here. He's big, strong, athletic for the weight class, and he fights with tons of confidence. He only has one career loss, and he avenged that loss by knocking the guy out in the first round. Blake Bilder only has one career loss, and that was his last fight against Kyle Nelson, who I think he slept on a little bit. Kyle Nelson's not the kind of guy that you sleep on, because you get in there and you realize, oh, he's fighting me. Oh, he's doing a lot of things right. Okay, now you've lost a decision. And based on that, I feel like it could go one of two ways for Blake Bilder. I think it could either be something that motivates him moving forward and we see a better version of him than we've ever seen, or his confidence is shook moving forward and he's not able to get it back. Right now, it's hard to say which way that's going to go, but this fight is going to answer those questions. That was a grueling fight, and he stayed competitive throughout, even though I thought that he lost. He has the edge in power, and to me, Blake Bilder's going to need to get takedowns in this fight. He needs a submission to win this fight. At kickboxing range, I think that he's going to have a lot of trouble. So give me Jeong Lee to win this fight by decision. Next, we're looking at a fight with Luana Carolina and Julija Stoliarenko, striker versus grappler. Luana Carolina, decent striker. She's going to want to keep the feet, keep kickboxing range. She has long arms, throws and combinations. Nothing to worry about from a striking perspective. Nothing at all. Julija Stoliarenko could not punch her way out of a paper bag, and if she gets sucked into a kickboxing match, she's going to look lost and she's going to lose rounds. If she gets into the clinch, you can cancel Christmas. That's the upside that Julija Stoliarenko provides. High-level judo from Stoliarenko that's going to come with armbar attempts, possibly the most proficient armbar in the sport today. All of her wins but one have come by submission, specifically armbar. She's great at it, and I am a sucker for a specialist, I'll tell you that. Now, if you do defend the armbar, you have nothing else to worry about. Simple as that, like nothing at all. If somebody with no arms fought Julija Stoliarenko, they would win 30-27 across the board. But the question is simple, and the answer dictates what you should be doing. Do you think that Luana Carolina can defend an early takedown or not? It's about defending the takedown. Many have defended the takedown from Stoliarenko, and that's why her record is as bad as it is. She's a one-trick pony, and if you're like that, you better have one hell of a trick. But I feel like she's improving, 2-1 in her last 3, but again, if Luana Carolina can defend a takedown, it's going to be different. One of the reasons I feel good about Stoliarenko, though, is that Luana Carolina has not shown that she has significant punching power, at least not enough to keep somebody like Stoliarenko from trying to close that distance. I think she wastes no time getting the clinch that she's looking for here. A lot of her wins are coming at the 30-second, 45-second mark. I think the best bet in this fight is Julija Stoliarenko round 1 submission, and that's also going to be the pick. I think Julija Stoliarenko wins this fight by submission. Next, we have a fight with Landon Quinones fighting Marquel Medeiros this week. I like Landon Quinones, and I was waiting for him to get booked. He makes his UFC debut on short notice against Nasrat Haqparast. He doesn't win, but his volume was so high, his toughness was so high. He had moments in these fights that you know that you were getting a junkyard dog here. Medeiros hasn't fought the highest level of competition. Now he's making his UFC debut, so there's going to be nervous energy, there's going to be jitters there, and he's fighting somebody who's not just going to fall. That's the thing with a lot of these guys coming into the UFC. They're used to just getting guys out of there, and then when they get to the UFC and they realize this guy's not going anywhere, I got to fight a clean, hard 3 rounds, you could see them start to fall apart. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I think Medeiros is still very talented, but I think Landon Quinones, it's his time. I think he's going to start to be able to put together some wins at the UFC level. For him to be able to hang in there against Nasrat Haqparast, who has put guys away before, I like it. I like the output. I think that he's going to bite down on his mouthpiece, let his hands go, and I think he's going to win rounds, especially the second and third round. I don't see a knockout here. I think both of these guys are tough enough for it to go the distance. I think it's going to be competitive. It's going to be one of those fights where if it's close, people are going to be screaming robbery either way, but I think that Landon Quinones gets it done this week. I think he wins on the scorecards. Give me Landon Quinones by decision. And lastly, we're looking at Thomas Peterson versus Jamal Pogues, who's fighting the wrong man here. He's fighting Thomas Peterson when in reality he should be fighting his barber. Thomas Peterson's coming in here with a good amount of momentum. He's got a good record. He looked good on the Contender Series. He's going to come out here, try to get Jamal Pogues down to the ground and just beat on him and try to get him out of there early. It's a tough ask because Jamal Pogues is going to be more poised, I assume. He's got sneaky athleticism. He can wrestle himself, and he's going to be the better striker here. I don't want to buy into the Contender Series guy hype just because we've seen Jamal Pogues actually win UFC fights, but he's one of those guys who has such a limited skill set and he doesn't really look to have heavyweight power that I just don't like it. I'd rather get on the bandwagon now with the excitement, with the hype of Thomas Peterson coming into the UFC. I think Peterson comes in here, guns a-blazing, takes him down early and gets him out of there early. I think Thomas Peterson wins this fight inside the distance. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment something for the algorithm, and I will see you later in the week for final picks.